Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name's Lee Eldridge. I am a human performance coach that spent 20 years working with elite athletes, business individuals and teams. And in this video, I'm going to talk about the true cost of burnout and the one thing that we need to be thinking about to support us in not becoming burnt out. Welcome back to the channel if you're new. As I mentioned, my name is Lee Eldridge. I spent about 20 years working in elite environments, professional sports, really to understand around human performance and what drives us and what we need to do to support sustainable high performance in any environment. This channel is talking about not only performance in business, but being a dad and how to support that life. One of the areas that always comes up in every conversation that I have, in terms of whether it's the individual or the team in law firms, companies, etc., is the cost of burnout. And everybody that I see is pretty much looking at it from an individual's point of view. And I think that we go through life and we make so many sacrifices and then ultimately it's just too much. Okay, and we know that there are scientific markers of burnout, whether that's exhaustion, not being able to get out of bed, not being able to think clearly, making poor food decisions, not doing physical activity, strained relationships and not getting to where you want to be, and you are constantly in this cycle going around. So as I said, in this video I'm going to talk about the three big things of how we need to understand about the cost of burnout, and then the one thing that we need to be thinking about to support us in this. So point number one, the first thing we need to think about with burnout, not just for us, but is the strain on relationships. And this is going to be the biggest one, because if you are burnt out, okay, yeah, you can't perform, you can't get up, you can't go to work, you can't build your business. But think about the people around you. Think about the relationships that are going to become under huge strain because you can't help out with the kids, you can't do the school run, you can't cook dinner. If you are in bed and you are exhausted, who is going to pick up the slack at home and in the office? So when we're thinking about the decisions that we make, ultimately, that are not the best for us or are pushing us towards overwhelm, are pushing that stress level too high, we all understand that there's this optimal U theory of stress, where basically not enough stress, bored, lethargic, too much stress, overwhelm, constant kind of cortisol happening, loads of stress responses all the time, not performing. And then there's this kind of sweet spot, this optimum where we just have the right amount of stress. This is really difficult to monitor. This is really difficult to get to that perfect point because life happens. So that you kind of shifts left and right depending on what we're doing. Obviously, if we're well rested, we're hydrated, we're having good relationships, we're exercising, the amount of stress that we can take increases. And then if we flip it and think about the opposite things that kind of don't help with that you just moves down. So when you're thinking about, oh my God, am I going to push through? I just need to keep going. I need to keep doing this. And think, well, what happens if I can't keep doing? Think about the people around you. Think about the relationships that are going to be affected because you cannot perform as a dad or as a leader in your business. Point number two is the cycle of exhaustion. So as we start down this trend, fatigue comes into the system, and then that is going to impact the fact that we're going to be working even harder. So if you imagine the simple thought process is that you get on a treadmill in the gym, and what you do is you put it at level 3 and you start to walk. Well, after a certain period of time, you start to get fatigued. And then what happens is, what do? Do we jump off the treadmill? Unlikely in the world that we live in today is that probably somebody will come on and just say, right, let's go up a gradient, up a gradient, up a gradient. So we're already fatigued and then we are demanding more of ourselves. I speak to loads of people in different companies and they always talk to me about high performance environments. They say this is a high performing environment, we're trying to be the best of the best. But in my mind, all they're talking about is high demanding environments. There is demand all the time. Looking back in working with professional athletes, my job was to stress them to the point and then allow them to recover, allow them to become a stronger person, and then go again. But we don't see this in business. We just see this as let's go, let's go, let's go. And ultimately, you're just taking more and more and more out of the system. And that's the thing that leads to burnout. So this cycle of exhaustion is one thing where you kind of get on that track and get on that thing that's going around and around and around, and you're desperate to jump off of it. But the challenge comes that you can't completely step away from your business. You've got to be kind of on. As a dad, we can't step away from being a dad. We've got to be on. So understanding that and thinking about the decisions that you make from a day-to-day point of view are critical in you becoming more resilient, able to kind of take on stress, understanding this variation that we go through. And probably the biggest one, point number 3, is that it affects your leadership at home, in the business, or in the office. Because somebody who is under stress, they're not going to be able to communicate as well. They're not going to be able to get their messages across, respond in the right tone, in the right manner. Therefore, it leads to a detriment in emotional intelligence. They're going to have less empathy for the people around them. They're not going to be able to regulate their emotions as well as possible. Lots of dads I speak about, there's huge guilt. They come home, they've worked hard, they're fatigued, they're stressed, and they bring that stress into the family environment. They don't mean to do it. We all don't mean. I'm sure that, I can put my hand on my heart and say, look, there's been times when the response to my son, to my daughter, is not as good as it should have been. And that is ultimately because of external things that have happened during the course of the day. And I always ask myself, is that fair to them? They haven't said to me, go out, put yourself under loads of stress and then bring it all back. And I think that is critical to think about how it is affecting your leadership. Because if you are not being an effective leader, then we kind of go back through into that cycle of exhaustion. It's harder to speak to people. It takes longer for them to understand what you want, for you to understand what they want. Emotional regulation takes its toll from a hormonal point of view, and you start to make poorer decisions, and then that cycle kicks in and we go. So don't only think about the cost of burnout for you as an individual, and I'm not meaning by a selfish point of view, but think about that leadership role that you play in your life. As I've touched on, burnout is a massive thing across all industries, huge stats, huge research around how much stress people are under. And I think there is one clear thing that people do to support them in thinking about this burnout, the cost of burnout. And you might be thinking, this is a load of rubbish. But trust me, from the hundreds of senior leaders that I've worked with, this really helps. And that is making sure that you have a clear vision. Making sure that you know where you are going. Why is this so important? Because once you start to take stock, once you start to say, right, I want to be here in 5 years, who's around me, what are the relationships like, you know that then the actions that you're taking now, how are they going to affect you, or how are they going to affect the people in the coming 5 years? What is the effect of you bringing that stress back into the house with a relationship with your children, with a relationship with your partner, with your wife? What is going to happen there? Now, once you've created that vision, you start to step back from a day-to-day point of view through the year, the months, the week, and you get down to that day and you think about the decisions that you're going to make. Is that pushing you towards where you want to go? And that's a big thing, because if we can understand that, then what happens is that when loads of work come onto us or people ask us to do something, you have a clear point to say, actually, no, I don't want to do that. Actually, that's not going to push me where I need to go. And that is a massive point for you to really think about, right, these are the decisions that I need to take. And what happens then is you become a sniper in your decisions, not somebody walking around with a shotgun. You become very focused, very clear on what you need to be doing. And just sit down, find some space, probably one of the hardest things, space and time for busy people, especially busy business dads. But just carve out what you want. Carve out how it's going to feel, what's the emotions, really kind of get into that. That adds that excitement, that adds that motivation, because then we're on this journey. So that is the one thing that I would suggest you do. 5, 10, 15 minutes, write down where you want to go and check in from a week-to-week point of view. Thanks so much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it useful and you've got some things to take away and think about. If you're interested, there is a link in the description to the newsletter, a weekly newsletter giving tips, tricks, and more importantly, giving people's examples of business dads of what they're struggling with or what they are really doing well. Just sign up and you get a weekly email. But that's all for now. I hope you enjoyed the video again, and thanks for watching.